Right. I think we're live. Is yours froze up?
No,
No. Right. That's fine.
I'm just very still.
Right. That's fine. So, thanks very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, you're famous now, so I have to try and get in on the fame.
Everyone's famous now on Instagram. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean anything.
So, obviously, I first met you a couple of years ago when I come down to Grenade.
Yeah,
It was that long, eh?
yeah,
Obviously, I'd followed you on Instagram for a little bit before that, so it's mental because I knew you really before I
yeah,
really knew you because
yeah, same.
it's nuts, isn't it? What social media can do,
Yeah.
and I could tell by your Instagram account that you were a genuine, nice guy, and that's just got more confirmed by watching the stuff you do. Um,
Oh, thanks, mate.
what I like about the stuff that you post on Instagram is how neutral you are on everything. You're understanding. Obviously, being a GP, you have to be that type of person. I think.
Mm.
Although some of them are bell ends, but it's. I think you have to be sort of seeing everybody's viewpoints and stuff. And I love the posts that you do when it highlights how bad of human beings we all are and judgmental and stuff. And
Yeah.
we'll go on to this later, but from a mental health point of view, your page is awesome, and
Thank you.
it's probably one of the best that I like watching because I think social media is awful for mental health and people's self-esteem and stuff like that. But you don't realize it till you look at
Mm.
something like that you highlight, and then you think like,
Yeah.
"Oh shit, yeah, people probably shouldn't really do that, but they do."
Yeah.
We'll come on to that, but
Okay.
obviously your journey has been amazing. One of the best transformations I've seen in
Oh,
not just
thanks.
not just your body, but the way you are as well. I was trying to find out how I could pop your picture up, but I couldn't. So I don't know whether anyone can. So that's Dr. Mike. His first start.
Hey.
He's always been a smart guy. But what a difference that is. Unbelievable. So
Thanks, mate.
obviously we've spoke of how you got into the fitness and that. Jamie's sort of duped you into it with his velvety tongue. Can you just go into a little bit about how that happened?
Yeah. It's actually like so when I first started, I first started like I made this decision that I wanted to try and change how I felt and how I looked. I kind of felt that things were kind of going in the wrong direction, and I had always had that thing in the back of my mind that, oh yeah, someday like I'll lose weight, I'll become fit. And I kind of thought time's kind of running out, and everything's moving in the wrong direction, to the point where, you know, like if I had to run for a train or something like that, I felt like I was going to die, and it was that's not how anyone wants to feel.
Yeah,
And so I kind of thought this isn't working. It's not working for me to keep thinking that one day it's all just going to magically fix itself. I'm going to have to make some changes. And I started. It was a bit of a I started. I was on Twitter a lot at the time. Social media has been a really big kind of. We talked about the negatives of social media in terms of mental health and stuff, but I think there are huge positives with social media in terms of stuff like accountability and in terms of getting information from people who have the same interests that you do. Like, for example, my entire social life and everybody who I knew at that time was doctors,
yeah,
because I worked in a hospital, and my whole life was my work, and my whole social life was because I'd moved to a town because of the fact that I had a job there. So everyone I met through work. So when that's the case, people don't always share the same interests as you outside of work. The thing that you've got that sort of bonds you is that. So I always found social media really helpful to connect with people who were interested in things that I was interested with, but who came from very different backgrounds. And I find that really valuable. And so I ended up chatting to a guy that at the time I, had obviously no knowledge of this, but it was a guy that was in the army with Jamie many years ago. And he ended up giving me massive help in terms of advising me on how to lose weight and how to get fitter and stronger and healthier and what type of training to do and all this kind of stuff. Really, really nice chap. And at the time, I remember him telling me about Jamie, like, and going, "Oh, look at my mate from the army, like, look how well he's doing now." And I remember going, "Oh yeah, cool," and not really thinking anything of it. And then it was like maybe 4 years later. So I was at this point, I felt I'd gone as far as I wanted to go, really, to be honest. Like, I'd lost a load of weight, I was slimmer, I was doing some strength training, and things were progressing sort of on a very, very slow sort of level. And I thought I'd cracked it, basically. And that was when someone shared a Facebook post on my page saying Jamie Alderton's opening a gym in your town. And I was like, what? That's that guy who my mate Ben was in the army with. Like, he's some big, like, fitness model dude. What's he doing in Chichester? Yeah. And I replied, I sort of posted underneath the video saying, like, new gym coming to Chichester. And I was like, what, why are you opening a gym in Chichester? Like, that's a weird business plan, mate. And he was like, because I live there. And I'd had no idea that this, that whole time, this was a guy that just lived down the road, basically. So we got chatting about the gym, and it was something that I was excited about because we didn't traditionally have very good gyms in our area, but I'd also just joined a new gym that I had a 12-month contract with. So I was like, this is really great that you're doing this, but I'm not going to be able to join your gym because I've just started a new one. But, I'm really happy to be able to, like, to spread the word and to maybe, like, do some writing for your website, because they were talking a lot about online memberships and stuff like that as well. They were trying to be, like, really innovative with people in their training. So it's like, if there's anything I could do to help, then I'd be more than happy to. And so we had a bit of we met up for a coffee and had a chat about it. And then I went to a taster session because they put on free taster sessions of their, like, Metcon sessions. And it was amazing. Like, it was just literally, like, I really enjoyed the session. And I remember going into it, and I'm sure you've experienced this a lot yourself in terms of, like, fitness stereotypes and things like that. I was expecting to go into this, like, snazzy gym, and it was going to be like, that gym, have you watched Dodgeball?
Yeah. Globo Gym.
And I was like, yeah. I thought it's definitely going to be like Globo Gym. And there were going to be two girls running this class. And I was like, these girls are going to be, like, the worst people, and they're going to, like, look you up and down and just kind of be, like, really judgmental, and this is going to be really embarrassing. So I made 2 of my friends come with me to this taster session because I was so nervous about going. And I just couldn't have been more wrong about it, and about fitness in general, like, from the position that I had been in before. Like, the girls that ran the class were hilarious. Like, they were, like, cracking jokes. We were laughing and bantering the whole way through the session when we were able to speak and not wanting to be sick. And also getting a really good workout in. Everyone was super friendly. Everyone was really happy. The vibe in there was amazing. The music they were playing was amazing. And I was just like, I sort of felt a bit like I'd found my home in a really weird, way. And I was just like, I need to be part of this gym. It needs to happen. And it was, the rest was history, really.
Yeah. And I think I get that a lot. And I think because I'm big and bald headed and stuff, I was going to say people think I'm a meathead, but I am a meathead, but I'm a nice meathead.
Yeah.
And we always get them coming through. And for me, starting a gym is probably one of the hardest things you can ever do, because, like you said, it's all the stuff that's going on. Most of it's in your head, and it's like, it's going to be all these fit people. And my problem is with my gym, I called it extreme fitness. Like, who the fuck calls it a gym where you want most people who don't train to come, and you call it extreme fitness? So in hindsight, I'd have been better calling it, like, all shapes and sizes or something like that, where people will look, I'll fit in there. But I've called it extreme fitness, and I'm like...
But you know what? The other side of that is, because I've also been involved in organisations which are which are a lot more like that, and which are a lot more, like, oh, don't worry about any of this, and kind of really nurturing. But
Yeah.
the problem is, I think when people want to join a gym and they want to actually make a change, they sort of need to want things to change.
Yeah.
And if you say, oh yeah, this is for people who aren't very good at exercise, then what do those people do when they become good at exercise? There's
Yeah.
nowhere for them to move on. They stay in that place where you keep reinforcing that idea. You come to this gym because you're not very good at it. And it's almost like, and I've been in situations like that where I've joined those sorts of, classes and things, and I felt I was improving. And then I felt like now there's nowhere for me to go, because I feel like I'm supposed to stay in this box because this is the box I've put myself in. And I think it's quite important that, like, people have to accept change. And it's more like you say, being a meathead is cool, but it's what people's perceptions of what being a meathead means about their personality that's wrong. And you have to change people's minds, and you have to meet them halfway, not the whole way. So you don't want to be going, oh yeah, we're all kind of, hiding yourself, kind of making sure that they're not intimidated by you.
Yeah.
It's going, no, this is what I look like, and this is who I am, but I can help you change who you are a little bit if you want to, like, and that's cool as well. Like, I think it's important not to pander too much to that idea.
Yeah, and I think it's like what you do outside of that as well. And I think it's took me, in October I've been open 8 years, and it's took doing a lot of work in the community, helping a lot of people, for people to finally sort of take that stereotype away. And think, oh, you know what, Lee might be all right. And have a little look. But honest, like, coming through that, and I think with our gym, it used to be a car sales room, so it's got lots of open windows, so they can have a little look in before they come, and you see normal people in there, and it'll instantly put you at ease. But I know a lot of gym, and especially like Grenade, you were like in a little tiny door through a little tiny alley. You don't know it's there till it's there. And
exactly.
I think that's the scary thing about it. Most gyms, you're going into like little corridors, and you can't see in them. And that makes it worse, doesn't it? On your mind. And, but
and I think, like, in a way, that's the reason that Grenade was so impactful on my life, was because it changed me from thinking, do you know what, I can actually lose weight, I can be slim, to going, do you know what, I can be fit, I can be strong, like, I can be in shape. And those were things I had never really thought I could achieve, or I was doing damage control until then. Whereas at this point, I was like, I could actually, I could change things. I could change things up. And I made more progress than I ever thought possible because of that change in attitude. I was no longer trying to bring things down. I was now trying to sort of come out the other side and make things better.
And it's believing in yourself as well, isn't it? And no matter, like, as a coach, we could believe in somebody 1,000,000%, but if you can't believe in yourself, you're never gonna do that. So I've got down here, what did you learn at doctor school? So is it university you go to? Is it medical school, or is it?
Oh, like, you can call it what you like. Like, so the reason that people always called it medical school is that traditionally people would go to, like, hospitals would be a medical school. But as time has gone on, most medical schools have been taken over by universities. So, like, you go to university to go to medical school, like, as medical school is part of the university, so it's the same thing, really.
So obviously to become a GP, it's a lot of training, isn't it? It's a long process. So did you learn anything in that length of time that gave you a good idea of nutrition, training, performance, or was it just GP stuff, looking out for symptoms? And what sort of understanding did you have of nutrition and exercise before you?
I mean, I suppose the understanding was really limited to good nutrition is good for you and bad nutrition is bad for you. And if you are suffering from the bad effects of poor nutrition or poor physical activity, then you should make it better. but there was no real kind of guidance on how to do that and that sort of individualized approach. And that's changed a lot. I think even in just the last few years, I think a lot of medical schools have taken on board the criticisms that have been leveled about education, and there are lots of real kind of pioneers who are making a big difference in medical education for that. But I think that the difficulty is, but I think you do have to have an understanding of lifestyle factors. You have to have an understanding of the impact of nutrition. You have to have an understanding of the importance of physical activity and all of those sorts of things. But as a GP with a 10-minute appointment, you're not really I mean, it's in this, yeah, in the same way that you have an understanding of mental health, but you're not going to be a counsellor.
Yeah.
But what we need is for GPs to be signposting people to the right kinds of people and the right kinds of services to help them change. But the problem is that that's not always what happens. And I think, often you get people that will go, oh, you need to lose weight. And then that's the extent of the advice.
Yeah.
And you're just thinking, oh, well, newsflash, I kind of knew that already. I wasn't really waiting for that surprise piece of information.
A friend of mine went to one of our local GPs with a weight issue. I think she was over 26 stone or something like that.
Yeah.
And didn't ask her what her diet was like, didn't ask her what exercise was like. He just sort of give her the options, gastric band, and there was no sort of delving in to why she got like that. Is again counselling, you know what I mean? Because a lot of these issues stem from something, don't they? The mental health wise and stuff. There was none of that. It was just, this is the medical options.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really challenging one, because I think those factors that you talk about are so different for everybody, and that's why an individual approach is so important. But I think a lot of the time it is just society. It's the fact that we have processed high calorie foods shoved in our faces by society everywhere we turn. We are told to eat more, and we are told to eat more conveniently, and we are told that it's cheaper to do so as well. So I think in most people it's an access issue as well as actual. I think you can be really overweight and have no issues at all with your food relationship. You're eating the diet that society's telling you to eat, and I think that's half the problem. But I think the one thing that's reassuring is that, like, a GP might say all of those things to somebody, but you cannot, for example, if somebody comes in to see me and I go, you know what, you need a gastric band, which obviously isn't generally, I'm not going to do that in 10 minutes of speaking to anybody. But generally speaking, you can't just send someone for a gastric band. So even if that person has given that person that information, if they said, right, yeah, cool, I'll take a gastric band, that person will go through several tiers of a process of the weight management service, where hopefully, or you would hope, all of those things will get addressed. And I'll tell you something I find quite difficult as a GP, is that I don't know that I've fully got my head around what happens in these weight management services, because I think they're very different based on who you are and what region you live in, because they're all quite regional based and commissioned services, and they're commissioned in conjunction with like councils and local authorities. So they decide on different processes. So for some people, like the first step is a referral to Slimming World or to Weight Watchers.
Yeah.
And which might be enough for some people as well. Like that kind of, that a bit of education and understanding about what they're eating and what what perhaps healthy eating involves, and doing a bit more physical activity and just engaging in a process can be enough for people. But then there are several tiers above that. And then there's sort of surgical management, and you would never be given surgical management unless other options have been tried and failed.
Right, that's fine.
I hope in most cases, anyway.
We all, like, I always see a lot of PTs, health professionals, slating Slimming World on Instagram, Facebook, and stuff like that. From my personal point of view, anything where they're getting people to eat home cooked foods and be more accountable to what they're doing is good in my books. Yeah. We've had I think Slimming World will take them so far, and they're relying on a lot of people eating really crap, lots of processed foods, drinking, and then now they've got that little bit of accountability. They're not drinking as much, they're getting weighed in, so they don't want to look like an idiot and gain weight. So they're trying a little bit harder. They're not eating as many takeaways. And we like, I always praise them because they've got more reach than us a lot as PTs. They can get more people on board. They can start the journeys off, and we sort of pick them up midpoint and get them on a calorie control and take them a little bit further. What's your sort of thoughts on it?
So I think there's two really important bits about what comes to the social media attitude to places like Slimming World. One is that it's very important that we never shame the people that attend Slimming World, and I think that gets confused by people. Sometimes people slag off Slimming World, and actually they're not slagging off Slimming World, they're slagging off people for going to Slimming World, and that is wrong. I think anyone who's engaging in any sort of health behavior should be encouraged, and they shouldn't be belittled for doing so. And I think the other point is as well, is I would really be keen to know what proportion of all of the PTs that slag off Slimming World have actually ever been to a Slimming World
probably not.
meeting. Yeah. And then even then, if you're a Slimming World person, you are not Slimming World as an organization. So people are going to bring in personal stuff. So there's going to be there's great PTs and PTs who are idiots. There's doctors who are idiots. There's probably Slimming World like workers who tell people stuff that's not ideal. And I think that a lot of the practices of places like Slimming World are quite frustrating because they don't make sense to us as health professionals. And I think that there's a business aspect of Slimming World that makes me feel slightly uncomfortable, in the sense that, what we often hear is people talking about, I'm going back to Slimming World.
Yeah.
And I would like people not to need to go back because it works in the first place. But there's many reasons why these things don't work. And that's not all Slimming World's fault. But I do think there are some fundamental issues with how they educate people around nutrition. But I think that when you have any organization, and I say this about Slimming World, but also about the NHS, about Public Health England, when you have any organization that's doing a one-size-fits-all piece of advice to everybody, like en masse, it is going to have to be a little bit sort of dumbed down a little bit, so that it helps the most number of people.
Yeah.
And so it's never going to be a perfect message in that situation. So I think, while I am also critical of Slimming World and a lot of their practices, I accept that I don't necessarily have a full understanding of how they work as well. I think there are better ways, but I think that those better ways are also harder to access. And it's very easy for me to say, as someone who can very comfortably afford to have a personal trainer and a nutrition coach if I want to, and be a member of an expensive gym, and also has the type of job where I'm engaged in health education as well. It's very easy for me to use a better method, but it might not be so easy for everybody else to use that better method. And it's important that they aren't made to feel that makes them stupid,
And that's a great point. And with Slimming World, people dedicate their lives to it. Like, we have a lot of people coming and been on Slimming World for 20 years. It's like they've invested the time. They've invested, like CrossFit. You slag CrossFit off, and CrossFitters kill you. Same with Slimming World. I've seen PTs slagging Slimming World off. You get Janice kicking off because she's lost 6 stone on Slimming World, and they're bought into it. And it's like you say, it's like a personal attack on that person. Slimming World don't give a shit. They're not like scanning the internet and giving you shit because you slag Slimming World off. It's the individual who's doing it. And
you'll never notice. Like, I've never seen Slimming World comment on anything like that at all.
They're just checking the bank balance and watching that go up. They're not asked, are they? And again, awesome business model from Slimming World, because, like you say, it's like you can lose 3, 6 stone, whatever. You can lose it, so you come off it, put it all back on. You blame yourself. You go back to Slimming World, give them the money, get it off, and it's a vicious circle. But I always say to people, like, how do you define whether a diet works? They define it because they know they can go on it and lose 6 stone. But I'm saying, look, you've been doing that for 20 years, so does it really work? You know what I mean? If you're putting it back on and then it's coming back off, it works, but it doesn't work because it's going back on. But some people don't see that. They just know they can lose the weight and define that as a good diet. One of the big things for everybody, I think, is balancing your life while staying in reasonable sort of shape. And I always say to people, just like you commented before, while there's takeaways, there's sweets, there's chocolate, everybody's going to have some sort of issue with weight. We're not going to just be shredded all the time because it's nice. Like,
Yeah.
I am a natural pig and I love McDonald's, I love takeaways. And the way I sort of manage my weight, everybody's different. I like to go on it hard and get in really good shape, and then I'll relax it. And as soon as me boobies start getting a bit bigger, that's when I know I need to cut it back in. But I think if people don't get that lean to start with, you don't notice, do you? And I've had people come into the gym before that I haven't seen for like say 15 years, and this guy was 30 stone, and it was like, I know what you're thinking. How did I get this big? It's like, well, I wasn't, but while you're on about like why, and he said, well, I was just putting half a stone on every year, so I didn't notice. I knew my clothes were getting a little bit bigger, but half a stone, you don't notice that in the mirror over a year.
Yeah.
But times that by 10 years, 20 years, and you just put that weight on before you know it. I think if you get leaner, you can visually see it a little bit better, can't you? And it's like, all right, I need to chop it back a little bit. But like you said, the whole world's set up for us to get fat, really. You go into the garage and you pick a little tiny bar of chocolate up because you're on a diet and you're being good, and you get to the front of the counter and there's a bar 5 times bigger for 30 pence more. You go put that little bar back and grab the big bar. And you go into the pizza shop, you can get a pizza for £7 or a meal deal for a tenner, and you get 2 pizzas, and you go home, you eat it till your pants burst. And that's what we're all up against. How do you manage to sort of balance it?
That's a really good question. And to be honest, like, again, I think it's a very personal thing. Like, I've always found that like I sort of have a different approach at different times based on what my motivations are at that time. So for example, if I'm pretty, like, what I would say, on it, you know, if I'm being careful, I find it very easy because I have my calorie limit, and I know that if I delve into the cake at work, that means I won't be able to have cake later. So I then don't. Or I go, okay, well, I'll have cake now. And, you know, I think the issue is just limiting it and just having a consciousness of it. For me, it's having an awareness of my calorie intake. Because if you said to me, right, just go and eat as you will, then I know I will overeat, because I'll go, oh yeah, well, that piece of cake was probably about 200 calories when actually it was 600. You know, and it's just, I know that I have a tendency to trick myself. So I like to just be aware of my calorie intake, and to be, you know, I feel like that's not always great for everybody, in terms of nobody necessarily wants to track. And I don't think tracking is necessarily like needed, but it's just having a knowledge of what you're putting in your face, I think. And sort of recognizing that, you know, if you do have like 12 biscuits with your morning coffee, then you might need to think about whether you're going to have pudding with your evening meal. You know, it's not, you can't do everything. And I think that there are times when eating and enjoying eating is more important than a calorie deficit. And I completely support that. And the trick is finding your balance between making progress and making yourself miserable. And I think that's a very different point for everybody. Like, so I was speaking to somebody the other day about this. Like, someone was saying, we were talking about like people who, you know, have like Halo Top and have like a low calorie ice cream or low calorie alternatives to things. And I was trying to explain that, like, I made like a Chinese chicken curry in the slow cooker, and I have no increased pleasure from a takeaway Chinese chicken curry than I do from this. Like, literally, I made it, I tasted it, and I was like, this is amazing. So I don't need somebody to tell me to, oh, live a little, just have a takeaway, when I've got like an alternative that's perfectly acceptable to me. Whereas there are some things that are not perfectly acceptable to me. Like, I don't want to eat like actually I would rather have a Magnum than a tub of Halo Top.
Yeah,
You know, because it tastes better,
yeah.
and actually it's less calories anyway. So that's actually that's a terrible example. But yeah, there are some situations where, you know, I would rather eat an extra. Let's say like the Ben and Jerry's low calorie ice cream, for example.
Yeah,
It's 540 calories or 600 calories for a tub. The Ben and Jerry's is the Halo Top is what, between 300 and 400. I'd rather have the 600 one and actually have ice cream that's amazing.
yeah.
And that's still low calorie ice cream. So it's just about like being careful with your choices and going, actually, like, I'm not fussed by like if I have a takeaway and a beer, if I'm not fussed by the beer, then just have a Diet Coke instead. But if you are really fussed by the beer, then maybe have like boiled rice instead of pilau rice or whatever. But what I mean is, you can't do everything at the same time, but also you don't need to do nothing. Making some changes is a good thing, but just choose the changes that work for you, I think, without making you sad.
Yeah, I like especially like New Year's resolutions. I think when people come into our gym in January, it's like, right, Lee, I want to train 7 days a week. I want to eat salads. I'm going to smash it. I'm going to stop drinking.
Yeah.
And you just look at them and think, great, but you're going to do that for 2 or 3 weeks, and then that's it. So if you can do slight little changes every few months, but do that over 3 years, you're going to get better results. You're going to keep it off. I had one guy come and he was drinking 10 cans of cider every single night.
Yeah.
He wanted to just stop drinking. And I was like, listen, you will not be able to do that. You might manage for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And all I'd done was drop a can of cider out of each night every 2-3 weeks when he stopped dropping weight. And we sort of lost weight over 18 months. He'd lost about 6 stone and he was still drinking cans of cider every night.
Yeah.
And he didn't eat food. So it's like, for me, from a beginner's point of view, if you've got no money, you can't afford a nutritionist, you can look at what you're eating now, and without being a nutritionist, you know when you're being a pig and you're eating 3-4 Mars bars a day and you're having 3-4 takeaways a week, and just making little changes of taking one of them out per week. It's not, and I say, like, people say, oh, I can't afford to lose weight. It's like, if you're getting a £1 Iceland pizza, just have half of that, or 3/4 of that pizza a night for a few weeks, then have half of that pizza. I think people confuse healthy eating with weight loss, don't they?
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, is that there is always something you can do. You don't have to do everything. There's always something you can improve on, and I think that we're sort of trained. And I found it again recently, actually, because I've been, like, with lockdown and everything, I was like, right, I need to go and do 10,000 steps a day, because, like, naturally, I'd be like nipping to town, like going for walks and going to meet people and stuff like that. And I'm not doing any of that. And I'm driving to work and back. And I'm not even walking from my desk to the door to call patients in from the waiting room anymore. So it's a really different situation. So I was like, right, I've got to do 10,000 steps. So sometimes I come home from work and be like, oh, do you know what? I'm hungry. I haven't got time to do 10,000 steps. It's going to be like, it's going to take me an hour and a half. So forget it.
Yeah.
Instead of going, or like, I want to go for a run, but I haven't got time to do 5K, or I don't feel like doing 5K. So I do nothing.
Yeah.
There is an in between. And I think that we're like, human nature is very much like, oh, if I can't go on a diet, then I can't lose weight. You have to go on a diet to lose weight.
Yeah. And like, 10,000 steps is hard, isn't it? When you're on lockdown, I've started with Rob Waterhouse again. He helped me for my show last time. And first 3 weeks of lockdown, I went to Caterite, which is like a wholesale spot that normally deliver to all the hotels in the lake. I liked going there because you just pull up, you open your boot, put your food in, drive off. So you're not going in amongst all the supermarkets and stuff. So I was going up there. The only thing is, everything was in bulk. So I bought 20 stone-baked pizza bases, 2 kilograms of mozzarella, 3 kilograms of pepperoni, they done tray bakes, and no one was scrolling. I couldn't scroll past them. It was like some sort of like kryptonite where I was having to click it. So I was having 4 and then I just thought like 1 bit of cake a day is not going to harm. But it ended up being 4, 5, 6 bits of cake a day. Every time I went past it, I couldn't resist it. I was having a home baked pizza every night. I wasn't doing any steps. I wasn't doing any training. And I put literally over a stone on in 3 weeks. So then just getting my diet back to normal. And I still eat a little bit of crap, but most of the time it's better stuff. And then Rob's right, you need to get them 10,000 steps in. That is hard when you're not doing no. And then he was like, just put your watch on, because sometimes you've got your phone, you're leaving about. It's not a true indication. Dude, I'm not going out of a room. I'm in the same room all day. And like you say, it's about an hour and a half to get them steps in. And although we're in lockdown, we're not doing anything. I've still got my daughter, who's 2. She needs entertained. And sometimes you just can't be bothered. Like, even though sometimes when you're doing nothing, it makes it harder, doesn't it?
Definitely.
Not switched on as much.
Definitely.
But then 10,000 steps, like, obviously we always tell people, do 10,000 steps, it's going to help. Now you're doing it yourself in lockdown. It is a lot of steps.
Yeah. And I felt like the other day I went for this walk. I was like, I've been walking for ages. I've had enough from going home. And then 4,000 steps. I was like, what? This is crackers.
You don't realise how hard it is until you take away. So there's sort of like NEAT, isn't there, where non-exercise activity, and that's when you go from the car to work, when you go to the supermarket, up steps, and all that builds up through the day. We're not getting any of that, and that's a massive part of your day, I think.
Definitely.
So there's a guy called Dr Banna, and his sort of motto is, show me your friends and I'll show you my future. Show you your future. Your friends now, every time I look, you're surrounding yourself with that type of people, lots of energy. They're all into the fitness. Even being around Jamie, obviously I used to come down once a month, and I used to go home buzzing because you sort of feed off his energy. It would wear out after a month, like a week. I sort of like charge myself up down at Grenade, come back, smash it for a week, and then all the sort of shit that's going on in around you sort of drains you. So I could have done with coming down once a month for a charge up off him, but that's the same, I think, for people trying to get into weight loss, people trying to get into a bit of better shape. If all your friends drink, all your friends aren't bothered about fitness, then they're not bothered about losing weight. It sort of drags you back, I think, doesn't it? Do you think who you knock about with, who you surround yourself with, has a big impact on it?
I do, but do you know what? I actually think it has a lot more to do with general life attitude than it does with actual individual practices. And I think mindset is hugely more important than the actual hobbies themselves. So for example, like I've got a lot of friends who drink loads, but I don't really drink that much. And I think that the difference is that my friends aren't the kinds of friends that expect you to do what they're doing. And I think that's much more important than having friends who are interested in the same thing that you are. And don't get me wrong, like, I think having friends who share your interests is super important, because it's very difficult to do those things if you have to do them by yourself all the time. But in terms of like what I really benefited from is that, you know, and through obviously this whole process, I changed a lot as a person. And I did lose some friends along the way, and some of them I miss, and some of them I'm like, well, that's just part and parcel, and I'm okay. But I think that what is really important is I still have as strong a relationship with the majority of my friends and the majority, and all my family, as I ever did before. And the reason was because all of those people were, oh, hang on, sorry, I'm just getting a call. Just let me decline it. Sorry. So the reason is because all of those people were my biggest supporters the whole way
Yeah.
through. They got excited when I was doing something that was making me happy and that was changing me for the better. So the only people that you lose are the people that don't truly care about you enough to reflect on their own opinions of what you're doing and why they might not like it. And so I would have people who, yeah, they might have given me a ribbing from time to time, but they would never have been like, oh, just eat cake because it will make me feel better, you know. Like,
Yeah.
you know, it was more the other way around. Like everyone was super supportive, everybody was really proud. And I think that's sort of a reflection of the fact that I've always gravitated towards people who place a high importance on being the best that you can be.
Yeah.
And you know, like, and I was good at that from a education point of view previously. I was good at that, like, you know, studying hard and doing well at school, but I wasn't good at it for the rest of my life. So I wasn't genuinely trying to be the best that I could be, I think. And so, yeah, so I've got a lot of friends who have no interest in fitness, who are just as close friends of mine now as they have always been. And I think that's more of a reflection on their attitude rather than their hobbies.
No, yeah, totally get that. So it's a support really rather than
And it's interesting because Jamie of all people has never, like, I've never been out with him and he's been like, are you sure you want to eat that? Or, you know, do you know what I mean? Like, he's not.
Well, to
he's
be
not
fair,
somebody.
he eats as bad as everybody else when he goes out.
Well, yeah, exactly. But he's not the kind of person who's ever sort of, like, he doesn't influence you in that way. He influences you in the way, like you're saying, that he kind of demonstrates how he does stuff and how much joy it brings him and how much success it brings him, and it makes you want to do it. It's like that analogy that he always talks about it's that he tells these stories a lot better than I do, but that dude, like, the sun and the wind are trying to get someone to take their coat off, and the wind, like, blows really hard to make him take his coat off, and he just holds onto it tighter, but the sun just shines and the guy takes his coat off because he wants to. And I think that's how we should all be approaching these sorts of situations, is that we shouldn't be trying to push people to do what we want them to do. We should be pushing people to do what they want to do.
Yeah, definitely. Last question. Obviously, I think it'd be rude not to ask you some doctory questions since we've got a real life doctor on the thing. So obviously, Janice and Karen off Facebook are pretty well versed at COVID, telling people, sharing stuff. What I found is people just take stuff blind. Janice shares something about kids' diet. There was something going around the other day. It was a voice, and it sounded like a really professional woman who you would think was a GP, talking about the COVID, and she'd just been in a meeting and it was now killing kids. And, like, Emma played it to me, and because it was a woman and she sounded eloquent in what she was saying and she sounded convincing, and I just thought, like, why would a woman do that? Like, why would she make that voice note to, like, scare parents and that with kids? So what I'm sort of trying to say is, where would you point people to look at rather than listening to Janice and Karen on Facebook? What's the best places to get advice on medical?
Again, a good question. So, I mean, for me, like, the NHS website is actually incredibly good at distilling new information and kind of put, you know, even like, not in pandemic times, but when there's an article in the newspaper about something, they're very good at appraising the article and doing a sort of a thing about why they've said this in the article, what it means, what you can do, etc. So I'm a big fan of the NHS website. Also, I mean, it's for COVID related stuff. Think, like, the government websites. I mean, the thing is, the difficulty with COVID is that there is so little information because it's all so new. I think everybody's at risk of what you're talking about. Like, I've heard doctors do the same thing.
Right.
I've had messages sent to me in WhatsApp group by other doctors. And then when you look into where they've come from, it's because everyone's in a bit of a slightly heightened state of panic and everyone's a bit worried. So the minute they hear something, they think, oh, this is new information. I need to tell everybody so that they can be as safe as possible. I don't think it's actually, I don't think, I mean, I'm sure that there are some people that are malicious with it, but I think that the vast majority of it is just, it's speaking to how stressed people are and how anxious people are. And how difficult it is to interpret information. It was like the other day, there was a Sky News article, and it was talking about what Boris Johnson had said, and it laid out this thing that he'd said, and he said, look, you know, the difficulty is we need to have a plan. We can't just hope for a vaccine, because at the moment we know that the best thing that is going to happen to treat this is medical treatment or a vaccine. But we can't just wait for a vaccine. We have to do something now. We have to be trying to prepare in other ways. And we don't know how long a vaccine is going to take. Oh, even they might never be able to make a vaccine.
Yeah.
And blah, 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 this whole story. What's the Sky News headline on that article? Boris Johnson says we may never find coronavirus vaccine.
Yeah.
You know, that wasn't the conversation. That was a caveat. That was a hypothetical caveat in the middle of a sentence. And the problem is that a lot of people won't even read the article. They'll see that headline and it will freak them out for the rest of the day. So I think it's about being really careful about how we communicate information, because two people can tell you exactly the same thing and you can have a completely different reaction to it. I saw that headline and I freaked out, honestly.
Yeah.
But I had the sense to open it and read through it.
Yeah.
And then I was fuming because I was like, I'm so angry that you made me feel like that.
Yeah.
When actually I'd already read people say that we might never find a vaccine. Of course we might never find a vaccine. Like, we might all be wiped out by a meteor in like 2 days. But that doesn't mean that we're going to be, and it doesn't mean that we need to expect to be.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, you know, we're very used to it in some places. Like, we're used to every winter, we're used to the Daily Express telling us we're all going to be wiped out in a freak snowstorm, aren't we?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we don't pay any attention to it. But I think now people are more sensitive to it. So every time we hear stuff like that, it freaks us out. Kids can die. Kids can die of coronavirus. Kids can die of other things. And it's horrible. And thankfully, it doesn't happen very often. So not that many people have to face it in their lifetime. But if someone shoves it in your face and goes, do you know that tomorrow your child could die? It's going to make you feel like crap, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it didn't change between now and yesterday.
And I think, obviously, the government is still learning, the NHS is still learning about stuff, aren't they? Yeah. The whole face mask thing at the start of this, they said, don't bother putting face masks on, it's a waste of time. I seen Boris yesterday telling people to wrap a scarf around the face. Now, for me, I seen a meme on Instagram today, and it was like, have you ever done a dirty fart in jeans, which are a lot thicker than a scarf, and that gets out everywhere and the whole room's stinking? Surely a virus will, if your fart can get out of your jeans, which are a lot thicker than a scarf, surely a virus can get in the scarf, or is it to protect other people?
Well, it's a very different thing, because like fart particles are very different to coronavirus particles. So the fact is, like exactly like you say.
Has anyone done a proper study on that?
Well, they've done studies on the coronavirus particles.
Yeah.
So the coronavirus particles are heavy particles. So this is why, you know, when everybody says you need to be 2 meters away from somebody.
Yeah.
The thinking behind that is that if the way that you would catch coronavirus at a distance from somebody is if they cough, or breathe out, and the particles land on you, right? But the weight of the particles tells us that if somebody coughs, because they're heavy particles, they'll fall and land on the ground within 2 meters.
Right.
So that's why they think that the 2 meter distance is important, because then you'll only catch them if you go and like touch the floor with your hand and lick your hand, or if you lick your foot when you get home, or if you put your shoes up on the table and then you touch the table, you know, like it's stuff like that. So the particles are heavy and they sink to the ground, and that's why that makes a difference. So you would think then that if we wear a mask or a scarf, then some of those particles will be kept inside the mask that might have otherwise escaped. We don't know. I think the difference is, and the reason that the thinking has changed, I think, is for two reasons. I think at the beginning of this, because still the best way of stopping catching the virus is social distancing and washing your hands, right? But at the beginning, people weren't really paying attention to social distancing and washing your hands because they didn't accept the virus as a real threat. So the minute you give them all face masks, then they're like, cool, I'm safe now. Then they'll be going out and doing it even more, not bothering to wash their hands, not changing the mask. And then there's the fact that there's a massive shortage of face masks for health professionals. So then they don't want to say, yeah, everyone wear masks because it's better than nothing, because then everyone stockpiles the masks like they did with toilet paper. Yeah. And then the health professionals can't get it. And then all of the people that are exposed end up dying more. So it's a really tricky one, masks. And I do think that the advice has been incredibly unclear.
Well, no one's ever mentioned that the particles are heavier, because as soon as you mentioned that everything just made sense. But I've never heard that come from anybody's mouth before.
Yeah, because it's not a gas as such; it's virus particles within something. So, like, it's like, for example, if you've got gastroenteritis, and you've got a tummy bug, the bugs are going to come out in your poo. So if you don't wash your hands after you wipe your bum, and then you shake hands with someone, then they can catch the virus. Yeah. But if you fart in the same room as somebody else, they're not going to necessarily catch that from you.
Yeah.
No, so it's.
I think so. With this, like, corona, do you think at some point everybody's going to get it, and it's just a case of slowing it down so the NHS can cope, and we don't. We do it over a slower time so the country doesn't come to another standstill?
Well, it's difficult to know, because I think that the issue is that the fewer people that have it, the less quickly it spreads.
Yeah.
So the fewer people that have it, the less likely everybody is to get it. So if the numbers stay low, then yeah. But I think the difficulty is generally that the everyone's talked about flattening the curve. Nobody's talked about reducing the numbers of people underneath the curve. But I think the idea is that in many ways, if we flatten the curve for long enough and we develop drug treatments and vaccines and stuff in the meantime, then the outcome of catching it is hopefully going to be better, because the longer we have to learn about the virus and to prepare our resources to deal with it, then the less likely it is to kill as many people. Now, I'm not sure if that's been true or not so far, because we've obviously had a lot of deaths, even though we haven't had, the same sort of, we've still had that time, and we still had that time for preparation. But I think the difficulty is, and this is a really important thing to point out, is that how deaths are reported and how the disease like prevalence is reported in different countries is very, very, very different, and based on very different processes as well. So it's actually very difficult to compare those numbers with other places.
I noticed that, and there's not a lot of people, including like the homes and the outside the hospitals, is there? They're all, and yourself in like the fitness industry and stuff, all data can be sort of manipulated. But for me, obviously, I know we're trying to flatten this curve, but you were saying trying to get the vaccine or better measures in place, that's going to take months and months and months. At some point, we're going to have to be back to work.
Yeah, for a vaccine, absolutely. But even what we've learned about the virus itself and how it spreads, and different medical treatments that can help be supportive in people that have got the illness, different ways of ventilating people, different sort of reasons for ventilating people, etc. And different ways of assessing people that have the virus and knowing when they need to go to hospital and all of that kind of stuff. Those things have improved, and and those have improved sort of in just a couple of months. It's not just about the vaccine and about inventing a wonder drug. It's about realizing that there are drugs that we have that exist already, like certain antiviral drugs, and doing trials on those and figuring out if they help and stuff as well. So it's kind of any time is some time to gain information to improve things in some capacity. I mean, the time that we had, that I remember hearing reports from Italy about how bad things were and how it was like a war zone and all of that kind of stuff. And in that time, those 2 or 3 week lag time, hospitals were converting recovery wards into makeshift intensive cares. They were building, temporary hospitals, obviously, as we know. You've got like, people manufacturing ventilators. We had Rolls-Royce making visors with their 3D printers for us locally, and so it's even just getting PPE in place for people. There are lots of benefits to flattening the curve, and you just hope that then the overall mortality will reduce from that disease, because of that. But the difficulty is nobody can go back in time and go, oh, I wonder what would have happened if we hadn't bothered, and actually see, whether it would have been much worse, a little bit worse.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people slagging the government off and stuff like that, but for me, no, like they're just listening to like the NHS and the scientists and stuff, and surely every government would have listened to the same people.
Well, I think the difficulty is that there's governments are motivated by
Economy,
different things to science. So science is motivated purely by science, but the governments have to be motivated and balance the science with things like economy and politics and pleasing their voters and all of those sorts of things as well. So the government are not in an easy position, but that's why they're the government. You don't you don't become the prime minister if you want an easy life, and that's the thing, is that I'm sympathetic to it, but at the same time, the scientists have been telling us that a pandemic is coming for years. And we've had a few practice runs with other pandemics, and I do think that people are right to be critical of how prepared we were globally for this, and that I think that I don't think Britain has got it worst, but I think that there are things that I disagree with, and I think hindsight is a wonderful thing, so it's very easy for me to disagree with them. But I also know that the scientists that they are listening to are really good scientists.
Yeah.
So they should be getting the decent information. What we just don't know is how much of that is, how much of it is informing what they do, or how much of it is being manipulated to justify what they want to do anyway. I think that's the difficulty. But I think we all share the worries about the economy as well as health, because if the economy suffers, then people's health suffers further down the line anyway. So
to balance an act.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think there's like a lot of countries have started back, and there's been a second peak, and everybody's kicking off saying, "Oh, they shouldn't have done it." I think there's always going to be a second peak. Like we're trapped like caged animals. As soon as the government say, "Right, we're relaxing stuff," everybody's going to be more sociable than they've ever been in their lives. They're going to see their friends, their relatives, and
I mean, that's the thing, is that the alternative is either staying in lockdown forever until there's a vaccine, or accepting that we ease it for little bits at a time and sort of go up and down. And that's what a lot of people said it would be like. Is it would be like, it wouldn't be a first and a second wave. It would be more like just a bit of a wave and just trying to kind of keep things limited. And to be honest, there's lots of things about lockdown that I'm quite happy to crack on with.
Yeah.
And there's some things about lockdown that, it would be nice to maybe even to just have a couple of weeks where you can go and say hello to people. That's cool. And then they reduce it again if numbers go up. I don't know. I'm not the right person to ask about this, to be honest, because it's just my personal opinion. But at the same time, it is a fascinating topic.
I think everybody's in different boats. Like, I'm in a nice house, nice garden, got a hot tub, got a 2-year-old kid who's absolutely loving us both being at home. But then you're going to get people who maybe haven't got a garden, maybe hate the wives. Like, everyone's going to be in a different situation. And like, for me,
I love how you blame the wife in that situation, Lee. Like, people might hate their husbands as well.
Yeah, that was a bit sexist, wasn't it? Hate the partner. Yeah, and I think like it's everybody's going to have their own sort of issues. Some people's lost their jobs, and some businesses are not getting any income.
And domestic violence and poverty and stuff as well, like, a massive issue in this sort of situation. And kids that families that were relying on kids being fed 5 times a week at school, who are now having to do it all themselves. Like, it's not easy for people.
No, but then it brings out the other good side of people, like seeing the community all coming together. The food, the give donating food. Everybody's doing a little bit to help them type of families out. So I said at the start, it'll bring out the really best in people, and it'll bring out the worst in some. And you can see the contrast massively. But generally, I think it's going to make us better people. I think we're going to appreciate stuff more. Like, imagine the grandparents. Like, you're not going to have to ask for them to babysit ever again. They're just going to be begging every week, drop the kids off. And like, I'm not really a sociable person, but I'm missing my friends. I'm missing my family, whereas I'm normally quite happy in my own company.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of positives to get out of it as well.
Definitely.
Right.
Definitely.
Thank you very much for your time. I know you're.
Thanks for having me.
Really enjoyed the crack.
Been a pleasure.
Cheers, Mike.
Cheers, mate.
Nice t-shirt as well.
Thanks very much.
See you later, mate.
See you later.
I know.